Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? Good, good. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming. My name is Mark Faiers. I am going to be talking to you today about the DevOps organization. So I hope you're in the right places and this is where you intended to be. There will be a little bit of audience participation, so I hope everyone's coffeed up and ready to go. So about my talk, what I'm going to talk to you about today, what DevOps is and what it isn't, why does that matter, and what the DevOps organization is. You've probably got an idea already in your head, but we can discuss that together, and how that can benefit you. And up there is a picture of me because marketing told me I should put that on the slide. There you go. So I promised you some participation. So let's get into that. First question for the room. What is DevOps? And this is not a trick question. There are no right and, well, perhaps there are wrong answers, but there is no one right answer, as you're probably aware. So did anyone want to kick us off? What is DevOps to you? Yeah, go on.
My roles, because we are different. We are different from our point of view. My manager thinks if I'm DevOps, I can do everything, but actually my role is, from my perspective, to make sure deployment goes smoothly, no disasters, no fires like this.
Yeah, perfect. So DevOps is everything to some people, and to other people, it's about making sure things run smoothly, deployments get deployed smoothly, and you don't cause outages. Yeah, did you have your hand up here?
Barriers between development teams and teams who maybe support production a little bit more. If we remove those silos, if we link them better, then we can deliver product better, quicker.
Yep.
And that's what it means to us as well.
Yep. So removing silos, I think you've seen my slides already that we'll get to in a minute. Up there, yes. Yes, you.
For operations, the developers moving left as they're shifting left, which allows faster feedback loops and so faster releases.
Yep. So we've got developers and operations coming together. Anyone else? Cool. So I think we've touched on a lot of these. You up there, you touched on combined development and operations, obviously just based on the name. I think that's where it originated. We wanted to break down the silos that we had in terms of development and operations. We wanted developers to just stop chucking things over the fence, as it were, to operations people, and we wanted operations people to stop hating developers. Yeah. We then, so that was quite a while ago. We've moved on, I think, beyond that simple definition of just bringing dev and ops together. At least that's what I'm going to argue in this talk. And I think based on your comments, most of you would probably agree as well. You hear people talk about a lot that it's about people, process, and technology without necessarily going into too much about what that means. You get people talking about maybe it's a philosophy or something like that. But then since this term of DevOps has come along, you've got lots of other similar terms have been invented, and there seems to be a new one almost every week. So you've got DevSecOps, you've got FinOps, you've got DataOps, you've got MLOps, AIOps, now LLMOps. Why do we need all of those terms, and what do they mean? Basically, DevOps is lots of different things to lots of different people, right? But, and this is something I took directly from LinkedIn. I went to LinkedIn, looked on the jobs tab and typed in DevOps, and this was literally the first thing that came up. And I'm sure you'll be familiar with job adverts like this, where you're looking for DevOps or something similar to DevOps, and you get this list of technologies, really. So you've got, this is obviously an AWS related job. So you've got EKS, you've got Kubernetes, you've got Terraform, you've got things that go around Terraform, you've got various networking services on AWS, and a few other things as well. You've got Elasticsearch down there. But the thing that strikes me with this is it's just all about technology. It's just a list of services. And I think that DevOps encompasses more than just technology, but that's not indicated from this job spec. It's just list of technologies. We need people who know about all of these technologies. So that brings us on to what is DevOps really? And for me, and I think we've touched on a lot of these things. I think you down here talked about breaking down silos, which we've got in the first bullet point there. Increasing collaboration. That's this sort of the original idea of DevOps, bringing together dev and ops to increase collaboration between those two capabilities. We want to increase visibility of processes. We want to increase automation through DevOps, bringing in things like CI/CD, if you want to focus on software engineering. Innovating and experimenting, small frequent changes, shared responsibility, being customer-centric. So if anyone reads the DORA State of DevOps report, you'll notice that they put a heavy emphasis on being customer-centric. And my sort of takeaway from that report generally is that's the most important thing to focus on over and above everything else, right? So everyone focuses on the 4 DORA metrics, but actually reading the report, it seems to me that they view that as the critical central piece of DevOps and being successful in DevOps. And also, I think someone mentioned, I can't remember who it was, feedback loops. So the idea being that you get fast feedback. If you need to fix something, it's a lot easier and a lot quicker and a lot cheaper to do that as quickly as possible, rather than waiting to the end of a cycle and then suddenly, we've got 78 critical vulnerabilities that we need to fix. Let's spend 3 months doing that. And implementing continuous improvement. So I think there's something that is perhaps obviously missing from this. Missing in the sense of when people generally think about DevOps, they think about technology, right? And nowhere are we talking about specifically about technology here, right? So these things within DevOps, we generally think about them applied to the process of software engineering, SRE operations, but by themselves, none of these things are actually purely technical. And that's really the point of this talk, is that DevOps is generally applied to software engineering, but why do we restrict it to just software engineering? Why can't we take those principles on the last slide and apply them across an entire organization, hence the DevOps organization? And I think we're missing potentially a large slice of the benefit by only applying those principles to software engineering and sometimes more broadly to technology. So I'm going to try and take you through how you might be able to apply that in your organization. Yeah. DevOps is often thought as being purely technical. The principles are quite often only applied in things like CI/CD, infrastructure as code, observability. So quite often only applied from when you commit your code to production. And that only gives you a small slice of the benefit that I believe is possible through taking a DevOps approach to your organization. And yeah, it's not necessarily about technology at all. And here's a graphical illustration of what I'm talking about. So your organization broken up into colors for simplicity, the light blue being your technology function. So if you're applying DevOps principles purely just in software engineering or technology, you're only getting value in that area. Whereas if you apply it across the organization, you can get potentially much more value. So going back to the audience again then, I want you to try and think now of some examples of how these principles or some of the other principles that we've discussed in the room earlier could be applied. And I'll give some examples that I've thought of that are maybe not necessarily the best. But if you think about finance or HR or marketing or sales, how could those principles be applied to give benefit in those functions of business? Has anyone got any thoughts or examples on that? So if we go back to this slide, so breaking down silos, increasing process visibility and automation, innovating, experimenting. Yeah, we've got one down here.
I think one of the biggest one is any department that's outside of tech tends to make really big changes once in a while as opposed to small changes frequently. So I would say that one probably has the biggest effect, because I've noticed it myself in some of the finance departments when they release something new that they want to use, and they do that once a year, and then they have issues for the next year and they try and fix it for the next year.
Yep. So it's waterfall, right? It's being very risk averse, and sometimes being risk averse is necessary. I'm not saying everyone be cowboys, but I think at least take the approach of, can we break this down, and can we introduce these things incrementally? Can anyone else think of any? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, it's, as SRE, that we are trying to be customer centric. And for example, to look for areas where the reliability should be invested more in, we expand to not just our area of, standard monitoring and talking to larger DevOps teams or the development teams, but also, for example, recently we started engaging with the product operations team. So they have some customer related metrics that can indicate what customers do care about. Yep. What's the most frequently features used by the customers. So we started using this feedback, but breaking the silos between these teams for customer-centric reliability. So that would be one of the examples where we go beyond our silo to break it.
Brilliant. No, that's great. Has anyone else in their organization applied any principles of DevOps outside of technology that you know about? No. So this is my point, I think. That's quite often the case, that is only within technology. So let's move on. Before I do this, there's no one from HR in the room. Good. Okay. So my first example of how you may be able to apply DevOps principles involves HR. What if you experimented by making changes to the office space once a quarter and measured the effect that had perhaps on productivity, perhaps on the morale of the workforce, and used that to create a better workspace? Could be an example of innovation and experimentation. What about your entire business strategy? Like the gentleman down there was talking about earlier, a lot of departments in an organization will make long-term plans, and the business or the executive board is no exception to that. So typically when you see a business strategy, it's worked on for months, and you have to have lots of off-site meetings with important people, and then they come up with this strategy and then they present it to the business. And this is typically a 2, 3, 5-year plan. Why does business strategy have to be done like that? Why can't we do it iteratively? Why can't we build feedback loops into that and change course as needed with the business strategy? And shared responsibility. So why is sales and marketing only the responsibility of sales and marketing? And probably a lot of people in this room will hate me for suggesting that they might get involved in any sales and marketing work, but I'm not saying send people out to sell things. But what if you were given basic sales and marketing awareness training, so that when you come to events like this, you may be able to have conversations and take them back to sales where you're having interesting conversations, and you may have found a potential customer for your organization. These are just examples that I've come up with. And as I say, maybe not necessarily the best examples, but just applying DevOps principles outside of technology. So you may be thinking here, what does this give me? What does this give the organization? How do we get this value? And the answer to that really is the same things that DevOps gives to technology, right? The same things that it always has. So it's increased productivity. It's better outcomes for stakeholders, better outcomes for customers that hopefully we're getting through developing technology according to the principles of DevOps. Improved employee well-being, ability to adapt, to be more agile, adapt across the business to changing market conditions, which I think is particularly important in this current environment. It gives you the same benefits that DevOps has for technology across your entire organization. So then we come on to how can you make a difference in this? You may work for very large organizations in some cases, and people in HR, people in finance, people developing a business strategy are not necessarily going to listen to you. And I've created this high-level step-by-step guide that I think you can follow to try and make a difference and try to help apply DevOps principles across the organization. So number one, identify meaningful problems. Identify things that matter to people and are causing them issues on a day-by-day basis, because I think you're likely to get buy-in and support from people outside of the technology organization to try and fix those problems. If you come with solutions, people will be open-eared. I think you need to make a business case. Let's not beat around the bush. Organizations are not just going to plow money into sort of random initiatives that anyone comes up with. But if you can make a justification around the value that it's going to give the business, going back to these things, then again, you increase your chances of getting buy-in. Getting buy-in is an important point. Run a POC. You don't want to make the same mistakes that the business generally makes in big bang waterfall approaches. Prove value quickly, and then iterate and improve over time. It's not something that you're going to fix overnight generally if there's a big problem across the business. And then I think the final point is to find champions. So I don't think this is something that one or two people can do by themselves. You need to find people who are going to champion these kind of initiatives across the business in different areas of the business and advocate for it. Okay. So, in summary, what have I said today? Firstly, there's no one definition of what DevOps is. It's many different things to many different people, as the gentleman up there said earlier on. But I would argue that it's not a purely technical discipline. It's a set of principles, if it's anything. And you can talk and argue and debate about what those principles might be. But I think most people would probably come to the conclusion that it's most accurately a set of principles at the end of the day. And if it's just a set of principles and it's not just about technology, then we're potentially missing a large slice of the benefits that DevOps can bring within organizations by only applying those principles to technology. And then finally, inspirational quote, you can lead the charge and you can make a difference in your organization and help to deliver value in your organization by helping them to better apply those principles. And that is the end of my talk. Thank you very much for listening. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Do you have any examples of departments outside of IT applying any of these principles? Have you seen that anywhere?
I think that the best example, and we're a small business at RiverSafe, right? So we're only about, I think, 50 to 55 people now. I've not got the exact count. But despite that, historically, we had quite inefficient processes across the organization, from finance to HR. I can't say sales because we've got some of them sales in the room. Sales was fine. So we've actually got a DevOps practice that I lead within RiverSafe, and we helped them through a process and value stream mapping exercise to map their processes, find inefficiencies in their processes, gain visibility into their processes, add in automation, and improves, I'm not going to say all of them, but some of their processes to make them more efficient and the organization as a whole more nimble. That would be the biggest thing that we've done. Can we do more? Absolutely. But as I'm sure these things are not always easy. People have got BAU work and all sorts going on. Yeah, but that's one example.
Yeah, I was just thinking, if you were to try and have a conversation with these departments, generally people respond better if you have an example rather than talking from, in theory, you could do.
Yeah, so I think it goes back to finding the problem with your organization. That's gonna be the thing that's gonna get buy-in. If people are complaining about, I don't know, the way that you submit expenses or something like that, then if you go in and say, actually, I think we could do something to improve this, then people are more likely to listen and invest in that. So I think for me, the most effective thing is finding those problems within your organization. No, great question. Anyone else? No? Okay. Again, thank you very much for coming and listening. I hope you got something out of it.